I got a email from the CEO of this bank telling me I had to shut down all my accounts because they overheard a conversation, me talking on the phone to one of my friends about crypto. They debanked me. I'm rich. I got rich because I have a beautiful wife. I have 9 kids. I have a beautiful home. I wake up every morning happy because I don't have an emotional connection to money. Right. Our mission is to empower people. Right. How we're doing it, this is a new paradigm. Nobody has ever thought this way. Data theft is one of the biggest industries in the world. From a network perspective, creating a vast decentralized network creates security. Ultimately, if you wanted to mess with the data on a blockchain, you would have to log into thousands of computers at exactly the same time and in the exact same moment try to make a change. It's very, very, very secure. And that's kind of a cool thing to be a part of, right? So, like you said, why not? Why not us?
Why not us? Today on the Dillon England Show, we talk to Bryan Ferre, who's a co-creator of a blockchain called Optio. And whether you're into blockchain or not, this is a perfect podcast for anyone that uses Facebook, X, Instagram, any social media website. We also talk about what's next in the social media world and why this blockchain called Optio might have just changed everything. Thank you guys so much for coming by. Grab your cup of coffee and enjoy this episode of the Dillon England Show. I was thinking though, dude, it's just weird being, this is like weird for me now because
Why?
Because you and I kind of randomly met at AmFest because I was going on Amy's show and then someone was like, hey, you should interview Bryan. And then when I talked to you, like I had no clue that like my life would just be insanely different than it was when at AmFest, you know?
Yeah.
And then since then, I saw you again in Miami. Now I'm here at Parlor HQ in Dallas talking to you again.
Yeah.
And I just had no clue when we had that conversation that like we'd be here.
Yeah, I would feel the same way. I didn't realize
it's awesome
that we'd be back here again.
Yeah, it's just like you said earlier, it's just crazy how everything works out. And I think what I was just talking to Yasser about, and I don't know what episodes we're going to put out at this time, but like the thing that drew me to you and Yasser and the team, I've been in sales since 2018. I know sales.
Right.
And I know when people are bull crapping.
Right.
Like I know when people are just saying something to try to create this hype, this fake, because you see it in insurance all the time.
Right.
Like people see someone that made an insurance and they're just trying to say whatever it takes to get a sale, but they don't believe in the product. They don't believe in the project.
Right.
And when you were talking, and because I recently rewatched the AmFest thing to kind of prep for this conversation.
Yeah.
You can sense your passion for it. You believe in what you created. It wasn't this like, you didn't create this because you're like, ooh, money making opportunity. You created it because you saw a need.
Yeah.
You're like, this needs to exist and why not me?
Right.
So I kind of wanted to start there today, if you wouldn't mind. I think that's a good starting point because I think the best things that are made are the ones when someone sees something and they're like, this needs to happen. So walk me through, start where you want, but walk me through like why create a blockchain called Optio? Where did that start for you, man?
Well, so I spent the last 6 or 7 years really diving into blockchain and where the technology is going. It evolves really fast, just like all technology, right? And a couple years ago, I mean, the whole thing started when the pandemic started.
Sure.
And we had this just absolutely bizarre election cycle and cancel culture was just getting ridiculous. I'll tell you, I've always been a fan, like a big fan of Bill Maher. And I've always traditionally been a little bit more conservative than liberal. Fairly liberal on social issues. And I always watched Bill because he would always say things that I disagreed with. And I just loved disagreement, right?
Right.
It was during 2021, 22 that I realized that Bill is probably one of the smartest guys in the country, right? He knows how to speak about the real problems that are going on. And he was against cancel culture. And so I became an even bigger fan. But it was during that time that I really started to be concerned with And when I say concerned, this is stuff that I think about all day long, right? It's not, I'm in bed worried about
You're in
anything.
the shower
It's,
being like, wait,
yeah.
right.
I mean, it's stuff that is concerning. And so, if you're going to do anything, if you're going to do a project or you're going to do a company, you should tackle stuff that is broken, right? And that whole weird combination of what was going on, the vaccines and the disinformation and misinformation and the actual information that was getting brushed aside or canceled or whatever. And, I've always said, if it's on the internet, it's true, right? And unfortunately, that's what people believe, right?
That's the joke, right?
Yeah. And it's like, now you can't believe anything that anybody says.
Correct.
And so I see that as a major societal problem. And so when we first started working on the Optio project, we were motivated to create a way to incentivize people to behave well, right? And that, I think, is going to have a big impact in society. And when we say behave well, that doesn't mean let's stop the banter. Let's make the banter more constructive. And because the world is the world, and we are not going to always agree. In fact, that's exactly why we have protections for freedom of speech.
And we shouldn't always agree.
No, we
shouldn't. It's a scary place whenever.
Yeah. And so, I mean, really, that was the genesis of it. I believe that there are opportunities around the world in many, many ways that blockchain and the ability to incentivize behavior or choices or even practices in business, I believe that is going to be the next big thing. You combine what we can do now and what we're going to be able to do very soon with artificial intelligence and large language learning models. And even beyond that, the ability to process information and validate that it's true or validate that it's correct. I think it'll impact every industry in the world. And that's kind of a cool thing to be a part of, right? So, like you said, why not us?
Why not us? And since we last talked, if for the listeners that are like, what the heck is a blockchain? We talked about that last time. So you can go listen to that show if you want more of the like, why blockchain, why Parler, like why this relationship, because we already talked about that. So that is available everywhere, PlayTV, YouTube, Spotify. You can find that episode. I'll link it somewhere in the description. But since we last talked, you guys made an acquisition.
We did, yeah.
With a CDN called Edgecast.
Yes.
And for my limited brain that I try to process these things, and I just talked to Jason a little bit about the Edgecast and the Pulse side. For the person that made this thing, Optio, and like being the creator of a blockchain, now having something like Edgecast, could you break down in your mind the importance of this acquisition? Like, why is this such a big deal?
There's a number of different ways that it will impact what we're doing. To decentralize the blockchain, I want to actually talk about that, right? You hear everyone in blockchain talking about decentralized.
Right.
And there's all these buzzwords, just like there was with the internet in the early days, it was all these buzzwords. And so let's unpack what decentralized means. It really means a couple of different things. If you're talking to one of the engineers, what it means is that there's no one single point of storage, right? We're going to store all this data across this vast network of nodes. And I don't know about you, but I didn't go to bed last night worried about that. That's not a problem, right? However, what it lets you do is create a secure network that is virtually impossible to hack. Now, data theft is one of the biggest industries in the world that doesn't get reported on because it's nefarious, right? So creating from a network perspective, creating a vast decentralized network creates security. Ultimately, if you wanted to mess with the data on a blockchain, you would have to log into thousands of computers at exactly the same time and in the exact same moment try to make a change. So it's very, very, very secure. However, when I talk about decentralize, it's more about decentralizing the governance of a project, decentralizing who makes the decisions in an ecosystem, right?
Sure.
And so when you look at the evolution of tech, cloud hosting, content delivery, access to account, fintech products, and things like that, all of those systems are centrally controlled, meaning that they're owned and operated by a company or an organization or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And those companies, organizations, they stand as an intermediary between you and whatever it is. I'll give you an example. Most of my career, I have been either on the East Coast or the West Coast, and I've spent some time in Utah. But I have banked at the same bank for almost 27 years.
Okay.
And it's a great bank, little bank in Utah. I think they have three branches or 4 branches. And over the years, I built relationships at that bank. And to the point where my personal banker that I had there, I had her cell phone number. I could call her on Saturday. I was in Moscow, Russia once, and my debit cards wouldn't work. It was a Saturday.
Thanks.
I called her. She got it fixed. And she was great. I took her Christmas presents every year. She was,
good relationship.
It was awesome. A couple of years ago, I was in the lobby of the bank, and one of the tellers overheard me talking on the phone to one of my friends who is also in crypto. And we were talking about something that was going on in the market or whatever. And 3 days later, I got an email from the CEO of this bank telling me I had to shut down all my accounts after 27 years of banking with them because they overheard a conversation about crypto. They debanked me.
Why?
They don't like crypto. I don't know why. I have no idea.
Wow.
I have my opinions. Crypto is a big threat to the banking system. And it doesn't have to be, but they decided to make an adversarial relationship with this new decentralized finance. But so my point that I'm getting at is a centralized bank, meaning, and a very small one, they probably have 7
branches.
executives, right?
Right.
That group of people that felt like they needed to control my life made one decision that it was a shit show. I had to, you can't even imagine how hard it is to close down your banking relationship after that long and reestablish new banking relationships.
Right.
You can't even fathom how difficult that was. And it was just for nothing. Like it was literally dumb. And so when I talk about decentralize, if you look at the big tech companies, the companies that are collecting vast amounts of data, monetizing that data, and we now found out that they're sharing that data with foreign governments. Like it's a big problem. Now, some might say that those companies are doing things that are, if not illegal, they are nefarious at best.
Not good.
Now, but are they? I think you and I talked about this before. Mark Zuckerberg has a fiduciary responsibility, a legal responsibility to do everything he can to make as much money as he can for the shareholders.
Right.
If he doesn't do that, then he gets ousted or in some cases could be criminally charged, right?
Or something.
Yeah, you have a legal responsibility. So that structure, that centralized structure and centralized governance is what leads to actions that we might not think are in the best interest of the people, right? I'll give you another example. You and I think you still have yours, mine is over there. We both carry cell phones around. So how are those cell phones powered?
Battery.
What kind of battery?
Cobalt.
Lithium. There's probably some cobalt in there too, but lithium is the main thing in these batteries. They're in cars now.
Did you like how confidently wrong I was right there? I was like, cobalt.
Yeah. Well, so how difficult is it to mine lithium?
Not easy, I'm assuming.
It's actually really easy.
See, I'm nailing these answers
Lithium's
right now.
everywhere.
Really?
It's not a rare earth metal. It's everywhere. There's a very few lithium mines. The biggest lithium mines are in Afghanistan and Western China. And the average age of a lithium miner, someone digging it up,
they're minor,
about 9. That's the average. So think how young they go, right?
Man.
Now, why is it that corporations would even stand for that kind of thing? Well, it's the same problem. They have a legal responsibility to do whatever they can to say. Now, I'm not suggesting that companies do it knowingly.
Right. Of course you wouldn't do that.
But these are the kinds of societal problems that we're better than that as a people,
Sure.
right? As a population of planet Earth, we're better than that. I think you've heard me talk about my concerns with clean water and the food supply and food insecurity. These are all problems that are easily solved if someone would just do it. I was listening to our friend Elon the other day, and he was actually having a debate with Bill Maher about climate change. And he was talking about, Bill Maher was saying, we have too many people on the planet. There's an overpopulation problem.
A Bill Gates thing.
Yeah. And Elon responded with, we don't have an overpopulation problem. We have plenty of resources to take care of the people of the planet. We just aren't doing it. And so for me, now we circle back to what is a blockchain and why does it matter, and the Edgecast thing. That was your question. This is a very long way to answer that.
That's why I love long form podcasts. We have time.
We are taking a decentralized approach to everything. Decentralized governance, decentralizing the tech, decentralizing. And the reason that we believe that that's so important and powerful is it's empowering to our users. It's empowering to our community. It's empowering to the enterprise customers that will come into Edgecast. And we believe, I would say, fundamentally that our mission is to empower people.
Right.
Empower individuals and empower the companies that they work for. And you might ask, well, what's in it for you? If what's in it? Why are you putting all your time into this? Well, the greatest thing that's in it for me is I'm one of those people.
Right.
So I am being empowered as a member of the community. So it's a completely nuanced and yet very, very important distinction to understand that what and why we're doing this and how we're doing it this is a new paradigm. Nobody has ever thought this way. And if you look at, the growth of Ethereum, for example, Ethereum is a foundation. It's literally, it was given to the world. Now, did the creators of it make a lot of money? Yeah. But so did everybody else that got involved.
Right.
And so it's just a different way of looking at the world.
Yeah. So then I think that the cool part is, like, as this project continues to grow, one of the reasons why this happened, and when we talk about decentralization, is the whole Parler being banned from the App Store, J6 thing, banned, all that kind of stuff, right? Now you have an opportunity for an app like Parler to be proof of concept that this blockchain works, it functions, it has utility, it does something. Like we talked about this in Miami, right? Like It's not just like a transactional thing. There's actually value here. It's not a pump and dump. It's not one of those things where, we said Doge is cool for Elon to say it on SNL and it skyrocketed for 1 second. Everyone made some money and then it went away forever, right?
Yeah.
So then with this whole like Edgecast thing, I texted you this question. I was curious about this. AWS, not on blockchain, not decentralized. And I don't know if this is a right question to ask. This is just me trying to learn and process information. Is there a version where Optio and the blockchain that Optio is can compete with AWS when it comes to, like, if there's a company or there's someone with an app that just wants to be on the chain, Optio is now or hopefully soon going to be that option for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We built it in a way that anyone with a Web 2 or even a Web 3 app that wants to leverage the rewards mechanism, the incentive mechanism, uh, anyone can do that. And our hope is that hundreds, if not thousands, of apps will eventually be connected to it. And that's a great question, but there's an even better question.
Okay.
And that is, why does creating a token or a coin, how does that benefit the people and benefit the community and everyone that's involved? And there's a lot of discussion, and it's pretty much all the discussion when you talk about crypto. There's a lot of discussion about your ability to take a token, a coin, and sell it for money.
Right.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot, and this is a very nuanced thing, it's something that you have to think about. I'm not going to say it and you're just going to go, oh, I get it, because you got to think about it. What is the obsession with creating value in something and then trading it for money, trading it for dollars, let's say? What drives that obsession? Well, at the end of the day, what drives our obsession with having money is that's how we buy things.
Right.
We pay our bills, we buy our car. That's how we do it. That's the method of exchange. But that's not the method of creating value. That's just a method of exchange.
Right.
The actual creation of value is, I have a car, you want it, we agree on what it's worth, and its value. The value of the exchange is what matters. Now, what method of value exchange we use currently in most cases is a dollar.
Yeah, right.
Right. But that method of exchange is a very, very new concept when you think about the history of humanity.
Sure. We're not trading a goat for a chicken. Yeah. Right? So it used to be a lot more bartering and trades and whatever.
But that's something to point out. It was an exchange of value,
right,
not a currency.
Right.
And what's interesting about currency exchange is currencies can be manipulated, and they often are, right?
Sure.
And if you look at the history of, for example, the dollar, the US dollar, and you go back to 2008, which is when Bitcoin was created, it was also the worst crash in our lifetime in terms of the economy, right?
Yeah.
And that's why Bitcoin was created. Like, financial system looked like it was going to collapse. So the creators of Bitcoin said, hey, we better have a backup plan, right? But it was created as a currency. And if you look at how the US dollar was created, it's very similar to the way Bitcoin was created.
Interesting.
Nobody knows who created it, right? We call it the Fed, the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve Act is what authorized the creation of the US dollar. And that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't in my lifetime, but it was in my grandpa's lifetime. And so the currency system hasn't been really tested over time, other than it works so far, right? But does it? Like, if you look at back to 2008, if you look at the value of a dollar in 2008 versus the value of Bitcoin, when Bitcoin first came out, it was worth zero. And the US dollar has gone way down in value.
But Bitcoin
has gone way up in value. Okay. Now, part of the reason for that is the macroeconomics of the dollar, right? The macroeconomics of the dollar are, I can create as many as I want whenever I want.
Whereas Bitcoin has a finite value of coins
it has
available.
A finite supply.
Right.
So when you look at the really simple basics of supply versus demand, you create high demand for something with low supply, and the value of it goes up. And the US dollar is just exactly opposite of that.
Okay.
And so when you take a step back from that and you look at the method of exchanging value, right? I could exchange value with you if you had, we'll go back to the car. If you had a car that I wanted and I had a house that you wanted, and we felt like that was the value
trade,
of the exchange, then we could do that, right?
Sure.
And so when we introduce this idea of a new currency, you have to look at how can that exchange of value occur. Now, I have argued that we human beings we create a lot of value just by being alive.
Sure.
And just by living our day-to-day life. And what I mean by that is if you get up every single morning and go to Starbucks and get a coffee, and I know that, and I'm working with Starbucks, I can use that information to make Starbucks more profitable.
Right.
Because I can drop offers to you, I can sell to you, whatever it might be, right? So the fact that you do something habitually is that just that piece of data is valuable. Now, if you go to the same Starbucks every morning, the same coffee house, and you pass by 10 other stores, maybe a Walgreens or whatever, I can use that data to make those companies more efficient and more profitable. But your ability to access that value that you're creating, you don't have the ability to access that value.
Right.
Mainly because they want to sell to you, right? But if you had the ability to access that value creation, then I might have something that you want and you have this valuable thing, your thoughts, feelings, emotions, fears, and desires, and all of those things.
Right.
And I could find a way to exchange that value with you. Now you've got something that's really interesting. Now, we all create this valuable data, and all of these other organizations are able to tap into that because we have voluntarily given them tools to do that, right? When you buy a Tesla car, everybody thinks Tesla is a car company. Tesla is a data company.
Right.
They monetize data and they use data in order to create more value. And so when we put Optio aside for a second, and I've said this before, the value that human beings create by being alive is the most valuable thing on earth. Because if we both didn't agree, for example, that gold or silver was worth something valuable, if we weren't here, it wouldn't be, right? It would be worthless. It would be another rock. Oil would be another mud. And so we create the value in everything that exists.
Sure.
So if you can find a way to allow people to access that value and own that value, and be able to exchange that value, now you've created something really amazing.
And now we just circle back to the reason why tokens matter.
Correct. And tokens done correctly inject value into the system. Tokens like Fartcoin, they don't create value. They create price, but they don't create value. I used to do a lot of sales training. And when I would do my sales training, I would focus on the creation of value because no one buys something because it costs something. They buy something because they see a value in it, right? So if I'm a car salesman and you come in and we're talking cars, it's my job to determine what you value.
Right.
And then it's my job to show you how the price of this car is less than how much you value it. I'll tell you an example, a story. I've repeated this story in sales trainings 100 times. In 2015, I moved my little family back to Utah, and I had been living in Southern California. And so the car that I had in Southern California was very different than the car that I wanted in Utah, because in Utah, I value a truck with a 6-inch lift and big ass tires.
Sure. Right.
And so I went to a show, like an outdoor show, and Toyota had a booth, and they had this truck in the booth that was exactly what I wanted. The same color, the same lift kit, the same tires, everything. But they couldn't sell it at the show. They said, you're going to have to go to the dealer and talk to the dealer. So I took a picture of the truck, and I went to the dealer and just down the street from my house. And I walked in, and a sales guy came up to me and said, would you like some help? And I said, yes, I want this. Exactly like that. That's what I want. And he said, well, let me see what I got. And he went in the back and came out, and he said he found one that was the right color. It didn't have the right tires. It didn't have the right lift kit. And he said, but I can put all of that stuff on it. And I said, great. Give me the finance guy. I'm ready to do it. And he goes, don't you want to test drive it? I said, did I say I wanted to test drive it? I don't need to drive it. He goes, well, do you want to know what motor it has in it? And I said, it's got one, right? So he was going down all of these pathways to things that I didn't value as much as he thought that I should value them.
Right.
He almost lost the deal. I was like, dude, I don't want to sit here and talk to you. I want that truck and I want it by Friday. And so the reason I tell this story is when you look at tokenomics and you look at crypto exchanges and cryptocurrencies, there's always this talk of, like, you go into any of the Telegram channels, there's always this talk of the token price is fluctuating. It's hyper volatile. It's, oh my God, it went down today. And I am fascinated by that conversation, because what you should be talking about, I think, is what value can I get out of the crypto that I have? Not how can I sell it for $1, right? Or sell it for 10 cents or whatever, because what are you going to do with that? So for example, let's say that the Optio token price was 5 cents today, and you decided to sell all your tokens.
Okay.
I don't know what you'd get because I don't know how much you have, but let's say you got $50,000.
Yeah.
And so what are you going to do with that? Are you going to go spend it? Like, have you got something in mind that you'd like to go spend $50,000 on? Most people don't, but they move it, they sell it, and then now they have all these dollars.
Right.
And let's say that you just decided, I'm really glad I got those dollars. I'm just going to put those in the bank.
Sure.
10 years from now, they'll be worth less than the 10 cents that you sold it for.
Correct.
So the idea when you get into crypto should not be how do I sell it? It should be how do I use it? How can I extract value out of it without converting it to dollars that continue to go down in value?
Sure.
Right.
And so then as I guess there's going to be two groups of people that watch this. You're going to have the Optio community people. They're already in, they believe in the project. And then you're going to have the majority audience that's like, maybe they know some about crypto, or maybe this was their first kind of like crypto conversation they've been a fly on the wall for. For people that want to know more, follow more, you have a podcast.
I do.
And it's a good one. I enjoy it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have the stamp of approval by the Dillon England show.
Nice.
I know it's what you really wanted. So you came here dying for that. So where can people get more information? So where's your show? Like, can you?
So my
what
show
other resources are there?
Yeah, my show is broadcast on PlayTV. I think it's on YouTube too. I don't even know, to be honest. My team does all of that.
It is for sure on PlayTV.
I know it's on PlayTV. And I would also say I'm not the only guy you should listen to when talking about crypto. I'm not a trader. I don't do a lot of trading. Just this last week, I thought to myself, why you talk crypto, but why aren't you why don't you trade crypto? So I did buy some crypto this week for the first time ever. It's the first time I've ever bought crypto.
Really?
Yeah. Been doing this 7 years, and that's the first time I've ever actually bought it.
Well, it kind of just shows the focus on your project.
And I believe it's smarter to earn it than to buy it, right? So I run a lot of nodes across a lot of different networks, and so I earn a lot of crypto, but I don't, I've never bought it. All the crypto went on sale a couple days ago, so I bought some. I think the best way to learn about crypto is to join a vibrant community that is talking about it in the right way.
Right.
I happen to know one. You don't have to join our community, but we do. I think we have a different approach to it.
Absolutely.
Before I started working on this project, I've always been fascinated with natural health. And I think
we talked about that.
You and I talked about that. And I spent about 6 years learning how to be a coach, how to be a life coach.
Okay.
And when I was going through that process, I learned a lot about our emotions and how our emotions work, right?
Hmm.
Most of us, and especially men, most of us don't have any clue how our emotions actually work. And because of that, our emotions control a lot of what we do, whether we are angry at someone or we have a disagreement with someone. And the way that we think about it and the way our emotions respond to it is usually out of our control. I think it's one of the travesties of life, because if you actually control your emotions, then you get the outcome that you want as opposed to the random outcome. We even have words, we even have sayings for it, like, shit happens for a reason. Like, well, yeah, you're the reason, right? And so that's how I would coach
Right.
people. And the reason I bring that up now is we have a bizarre, I think bizarre, emotional connection and emotional attachment to money.
Mm.
And because of that, the most destructive force in the universe is fear.
Mm.
The most creative force in the universe is faith. So when you have faith in a project, you create value and it creates value. When you have fear, the value goes away, right? So I think if you're going to try to learn about crypto, you should be very careful about the sources that you go to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of gamesmanship in the industry, and there's a lot of tokens that rely 100% on hype.
Yep.
And so,
And I think that's the interesting thing, just to add a little context, because I've done enough deep dive in the crypto community that I know what some red flags are. And generally, when it's always about money, it's always about getting rich, it's always about that
always bad.
runaway. Whereas, at least in this community and others, it's about the value it's creating. So the excitement. And I've heard a couple of your stories and talks and things, and I've been in and out of meetings and stuff, and talking with Yasser and the company and everyone else that I've met. It's not, no one ever says, and this is like when I clip this, I'll make sure I get the full context of what I'm about to say. No one ever says you will get rich off of this token, ever. It never comes out. Obviously legal, but also because like the exciting thing is what this does. It's the utility. That's what the hype is not in, oh, look, the number's going up on, CoinGecko. Yay. The hype is like, guys, we just got Edgecast. The hype is like, and that's the difference.
Yeah. And I would say too, I was having a conversation last night. We had a dinner event. You were there. Somebody was talking to me and I don't remember who it was. And they asked me, what's in it for you? Like, what's your exit strategy, or how do you benefit? And my response was, I already got it. I already got everything that I expected to get out of it. And they were like, oh, wow, how did you do that?
Right.
And I said, well, because I'm rich. It was a lady. She goes, so did you get rich with this token project? And I said, no. I got rich because I have a beautiful wife.
Mm-hmm.
I have 9 kids. I have a beautiful home. I wake up every morning happy. And she was just dumbfounded. She's like, how could you be all those things and not have lots of money? And I said, because I don't have an emotional connection to money.
Right.
And I get it. It's really, really hard.
That's
I
funny.
got bills.
Like,
I got
when you first
rent.
sat down, I was like, hey, what's stressing you out? What'd you say?
I don't have stress.
There you go.
I don't get stressed. And part of the reason why is because I know I've trained my mind how to process situations that I come into.
Mm.
There's a great book called Becoming Supernatural. I recommend it to everyone on planet Earth. In this book, this neuroscientist talks about this cycle that we go through. He calls it thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling. Most of us woke up this morning on the same side of the bed, and we had the first thought in our mind, and it was exactly the same as the first thought we had yesterday morning.
I have to pee? Oh, no.
Whatever it is, whatever that thought is.
That's my thought every morning.
Yeah, whatever the thought is, though. But when you have that thought, every thought that you have triggers an emotional response.
Right.
And if that emotional response, let's say you wake up in the morning and you say, I have to pee. If that emotional response is, and I got to do it fast.
That's fear. Because I'm
right?
like, I don't want to pee.
Yeah. Then that emotion is going to trigger an action.
Right.
And that action is going to trigger a result.
Right.
Now, if you wake up every morning and go, man, I hate my job.
Mm.
But if that's the same thought that you had yesterday, and it triggers the same emotion that you had yesterday, which triggers the same action that you did yesterday, which triggers the same result that you got yesterday, then you're not even living today. You're living yesterday.
Mm.
And the only way you can actually grow and change and become happy and rich is to change the way you think and feel about things.
Mm.
So if I wake up every morning and I go, freak, I gotta do all this stuff, and that triggers an emotional reaction, then my actions are going to be the same and my result is going to be the same. So the reason you don't hear us talking about you're going to get rich in this project is you're going to get rich when you change your mind.
Mm.
Right? We have all kinds of people that are always talking about when's it going to hit this price or when's it going to, and it's like that emotional response and that emotional reaction is what's keeping it where it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's that fear or that emotional connection. And I don't know when I was able to do it. It was probably in the last 7 or 8 years where I just said, I'm not going to have a stress response to money about anything. And I've had ups and downs in my career. There's been times when I was like, hell, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but that's the ebb and flow of life. And if you have an emotional reaction to it every time, then the same guy wrote another book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And we pretty much go through life in a habitual way. We have the same coffee every morning, and we say the same things, and you habitually say to your wife, I love you, have a great day. And the I love you, have a great day is a habit, not a feeling. It's a habit, not an emotion. And so you get to the point in life where I say I love you, you say you love me back. Now you're just fulfilling the habit.
Right.
You're not becoming closer and more emotionally connected because you're just doing the thing, checking the boxes. Now, this is a bizarre way to talk about cryptocurrency, but
no, I love it.
But the connection to the idea that I'm going to buy this crypto and it's going to become worth a lot more, and then I'll be able to sell it and get rich, that emotional triad is what is preventing you from making solid choices about when to sell and when not to sell, right? And so people treat crypto much the same way that they treat the machines in the casino.
Right.
When it goes ding, 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 they go, it's exciting and I'm going to sell and take
almost
my
like
money.
Dopamine hits. It's the same. It's the same concept. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about like living for, yesterday. Because I literally had a conversation with my wife this weekend about, because I'm an entrepreneur. I do sales. And since COVID, it has been very tough on us. Some good months, some bad months, but there's not been a month in 4 years where I haven't been stressed about making payroll for the staff. It hasn't existed. Like we haven't had, and I'm very open on this podcast, my listeners know, like there just hasn't been a month in 4 years that has not been stressful financially. I make okay money, but all of it pours right back to the business. So like England family, oh, we're poor. Oh yeah, it's terrible. Business, we're doing okay. My employees are loaded, dude. I've found myself, I think this is the lesson I've learned. I think this is what God was trying to teach me, is I found myself always like being like, one day I'm going to have an emergency fund, and one day I'm going to, and that's when I'm going to be excited. Meanwhile, my daughter's 2. I'm about ready to have my second kid. And I was just as, again, we're okay, but we're not like thrive. I'm not driving a Lamborghini. I have a 2010 Ford Focus, right? Or whatever. But like, who cares? My daughter's 2. I spent 2 years of her life searching for me to have enough in the funds for me to maybe do this podcast full, whatever, right? But that's 2 years life gone by. Yeah. My son's going to be born next month, right? Yeah. Like, I know we're not really talking crypto here. We're talking more philosophy, which is fine, but like.
But it's the same philosophy that you should use in any endeavor.
Right.
Not just in crypto, but any endeavor. I'm going to let you finish and then I'm going to show you how to fix it.
Okay. So the idea of living and enjoying the day and focusing on the priorities on what matter, because at the end of the day, I should be just as happy in $100,000 home that's 800 square feet in Lincoln Park, Michigan, with my healthy family, wife, and kids, then I should be just as happy, and I will be just as happy there than if these things take off and I happen to have a higher number in a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I've been really working on, is not letting the stress of bills and stress of these things. And obviously, like, stress can encourage harder work or whatever, but like, really, I'm just like, I want to enjoy the good gifts that God has given me, regardless of the income of my bank account. Funny you mentioned that, because literally my wife and I were just talking about that.
We could play it back, and I took mental notes as you were journeying down that path of self unempowerment, right? And I want to point out a couple of things. And the reason I do this is because I believe that the words that we say with our mouth create the reality that we live in. Just like God was the Word, and Word was God. The words that we use are our creative power. That's how we create the reality that we live in. And you said a couple of words that I want to point out. One of the words that you said was, I should be happy here, as if I was also going to be happy in this other place. Right. And you've heard a million times that money doesn't buy happiness.
Right.
But you don't believe that. Right. You absolutely believe if I had a lot more money, I'd be
like
a lot.
Everyone
a
has
lot,
that.
Everyone
Exactly.
does.
Yeah.
Right. So the first word is should. And then the second thing that you said, and I took note of, is in 4 years, there hasn't been a month where I didn't worry about payroll.
Right.
Right. Has there been a month that you missed it?
For myself, yes, not for my employee.
Okay. And were you more worried about your staff or more worried about you?
Oh, staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is what I want to point out. Worry, fear, doubt, lack of abundance mindset created a reality of 4 years of that. Because the reality, the actual reality, never came to pass. The reality that you envisioned in your mind never came to pass. And isn't it interesting that in Scripture and in our conversations, we talk about, and it came to pass.
Sure.
Everything that we go through in life came to pass us by. It's like we're just passing through things, right?
Right.
So this is where I go back to that emotional attachment to money. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple things that you might already know, but our brain, the way our brain works, is we have a lot of different systems in our brain, the hypothalamus and all these different systems. But you can oversimplify how the brain works by talking about two systems. The limbic brain, which is the kind of the core of your brain.
Okay.
And then the neocortex. The neocortex is the outer layer of your brain. They call it the neocortex or the new cortex because it's the most recent evolution of our brain, right? It's the newest part of our brain. And there's some interesting things to understand about those two systems. The first is the limbic part of your brain is where all your emotions are generated from. That's where your emotions happen. The neocortex part of your brain is a difference engine. It understands the difference between light and dark and up and down.
Sure.
It's like a computer. It processes data, right? The neocortex has the capacity to formulate and conjugate and understand words.
Okay.
The limbic brain has no capacity for language. So, for example, if you have a neocortical stroke and part of your neocortex is damaged, you know exactly what you want to say, but you can't say it because you don't have the capacity to access the words. Okay. Now, when you say words and you attach them to emotions, those things, those thoughts become habits. They are your reality. So if you look back on those 4 years and you say, I was constantly thinking about and emotionally reacting to the lack of money,
right?
Then what you actually created was the lack of money because your thoughts and your emotions combine to create this reality of a lack of, right? So I would suggest that you never use the word should ever, because should is the biggest excuse or the biggest reason we don't achieve what we actually want. Because we say things like, I should feel better, or I should be happier, or I should hire this person, or I should, right? And all that's doing is making it so you don't have to decide to do something else. Because you can easily say, well, I should have done that, right? So that's another word, decision. What does the word decision mean? We say it all the time,
Right.
But what does it actually mean? When you make a decision, you are cutting off every other possibility, because we live in a universe of infinite possibilities.
Right. It's like the final choice.
That's right. And when you decide, you cut off all other possibilities. Now, most of us go through life thinking that we've made decisions, but we're actually making incisions. We're leaving a little bit of possibility there, right? When you got married, did you cut off all possibilities that you would ever be with someone else?
So.
Then you made a decision.
Yeah, right.
But there's a lot of people that get married and are like, if it doesn't work out, we'll just get divorced, right? And guess how many of those get divorced?
Like 100%.
Almost all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost all of them.
Right.
Because you've left that as a possibility.
Correct.
And so when you make an actual decision, there's no other possibility that could exist for that particular thing. And that's when we make the infinite possibilities become definite possibilities. They become definite. So the biggest problem that we have is making a decision, right? And so you might have said, I'm going to make a decision to not feel this way about my situation.
Okay.
That's impossible.
Right.
Because if the situation is that, your emotional reaction to it is going to be that.
It is what
right?
it is, right.
So what you have to do is, I'm going to make a decision to not think that thought anymore, because the thought is what triggers the emotion, right? So if you suddenly stop using that language and allowing the thoughts in your mind to be that way, then you've made a decision. You've cut off all the possibilities that there's not going to be enough money. That's how we manifest in reality. I think it's fun to include this in this part of the show, but now take that and think about your investments, your crypto, your car, your, whatever. How you are emotionally connected to all of those things dictates the reality of the outcome.
Right, exactly.
Dictates the reality of the outcome. So I would encourage everyone to recognize that what we're doing when we talk about free speech and Parler and all of these different platforms that we're putting out to the world, what we're doing is, and how we're actually going to benefit them, is we're empowering them to think different.
Right.
We're empowering them to be different. And at the end of the day, if they think different and they are different, they'll get a different outcome. So we talk a lot about, I'm getting crypto and I'm going to be able to sell it and da-da-da-da. But the reality is, what you're getting is freedom.
Right.
Because I can send you crypto and I don't need permission from the bank that kicked me out of the bank.
Right.
Right.
It's just more than that. And I appreciate that a lot. And I think it's also the difference of, like, Yasser came on and it was such a good episode. And it's a difference of having like a future focus and a past focus too. Because I think you can definitely learn from the past. And my history teacher always would say, those who don't learn from history are destined to repeat it. So I think there's value in learning lessons from the past, but living there, you keep making your past your present. And if you stay in your past, then it just becomes where you stay. In a way, what you're saying, obviously, in the crypto project and then in my life and in everything else, right? Like the ability to be content where you're at, but look forward and not just being so wrapped up in just because I've experienced things that have been hard in the past doesn't mean this is where things need to stay either. And I think sometimes you can have this like defeatist attitude of like, this is just my life. This is where I'm at. It's going to be hard. And you just stay there and wallow in just stupid, unneeded self-pity.
And I would suggest that there's another way to look at that. And I agree, we should learn from the past. But I think we should learn from the past of others, not from our own past. But another way to look at it is time is forward and backward. Don't think of it that way. Don't think about my past and don't think about my future. Just think about today.
Mm-hmm.
Because today is the only day you get to live and take action. You can't live yesterday and take action yesterday.
Yas was talking a lot about focus. Like,
that's right.
You can't focus tomorrow's focus. You can only focus today's focus. Yeah.
Just today.
Well, I'll tell you what, I love our conversations every time we get to chat. They're fun. And you have a knowledge about stuff I don't know anything about, but then also it's just you're a fun person to talk to. So I appreciate that a lot. For those listening, because I'm going to wrap this up, because I think you have a meeting, and my guess is we're getting close to that meeting time.
Yeah.
People can go to PlayTV, see the Optio podcast that you have going on. Optio.community, I think it's the website, something like that, .com, right?
Optio.community.
Optio.community. Okay. This is the website. You can read up some there. You can obviously follow my show because we're going to have updates, I'm sure, throughout the week. Is there any nugget or anything that you'd want to leave the listeners as far as like things that are upcoming or things that are exciting you on the project? Maybe I'm not asking you to like give some big thing, but like, is there anything coming up that you're like, hey, we haven't really talked about this. There's some exciting things coming for Optio. What excites you right now?
Well, we have a lot of stuff that's going on, and all of it excites me. But one thing you should check out is the conference that we're doing in November. You can find that at cryptocruise.com. I think it's crypto.
I'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the description.
But love to have you on the cruise. We're going to have some amazing workshops, some amazing speakers, and some amazing fun times. So if you want to learn about crypto, that's going to be a great place to do it.
All right. So I'll put the link in the description for everything that you guys need to know. Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for coming to this episode.
Having me.
Thank you guys for watching this episode of the Dillon England Show. Make sure you subscribe, like, share with your friends. Appreciate you guys a lot. Love you guys. See you on the next episode. Thanks.